So our next step is creating a remote repository. Now, we already have a local repository, but we still need to create a new repository on the remote site. And then what we'll do is connect up certain branches from our local site with the remote site so we can sync them up. So I'm going to go back to my account page, and then I'm going to click on the dashboard link at the top. Now there's a couple of different ways from here that we can add a repository by clicking this or clicking this. I'm going to go ahead and click this. So we have just one requirement, which is providing a project name. So I'm going to add one here. And I'll go ahead and leave description and homepage URL empty for now. Now we can set it to be accessible by anyone, or we can upgrade to a private repository. So we're going to keep it as a public repository, but this means that you should be cautious as you work through this series and as you maybe start to play with the repository a bit, not to upload any sensitive information. Drupal is already set up to make sure that the settings.php file, which includes your database username and password, isn't added to the repository. But if there's any other place where there might be some sensitive data, be cautious about adding it to the repository, or simply make it a private repository. I'm going to go ahead and click Create Repository. Now this gives us some next steps. The first is global setup, and this is the username and user email that we just set up. And then here's our next steps if we're creating a fresh repository. So this is if we're beginning our project by creating a repository on GitHub, and then we're creating a copy of it on our local site. But our setup is a little bit different. We've already created a repository locally, and we need to connect up. So we're going to use this existing Git repo set of instructions. So the 3 steps that it shows here are first, to navigate to where the repository is. In our case, it's a folder called loc.gitsite.com. On the second line, let's go ahead and read through it real quick. It says git remote, add origin, git at github.com, change management, bam change management.git. So what this says is that we're using the remote command in order to add a new remote called origin. Now, when we use the term remote with Git, we're talking about a connection between a local repository and a remote repository, or just any 2 repositories that are in 2 different places that are connected up in some way to allow for syncing between them. And then we're passing our user account information with the name of the Git repository. So change management is our username, so you would replace this with your username, or if you're copying this, it will simply have your username here, and it will have the name of your repository as well. So let's go ahead and do this line. I'm going to go ahead and copy it. I'm going to jump back to the command line, and I'm going to make sure that I'm in the local directory of our Git repository. So I'm going to do pwd. So we're currently in our SSH folder if we haven't navigated out of it yet. So I'm going to go back to the directory where our website is. Okay, so now when I do pwd, I'm here at the base directory of my site. So I'm going to go ahead and paste in the remote command here, and I'm going to hit enter. Now nothing happened just yet because we just specified the settings for it. If we jump back to the browser, it says our next step is to git push u origin master. This command will take the whole history of the master branch and push it to origin, which is our name for our remote that we just added right here. So this is our remote repository, or a pointer to it. What the u parameter does is add upstream tracking, which means that from this point on, our master branch locally will be connected with the master branch on the remote repository. This tracking adds some useful features that will come out as we move through the next steps. So let's go ahead and do this. I'm going to copy the code, and let's jump back to the command line, and I'll paste it in right here, and I'm going to hit enter. Now it'll take a minute to upload, but as it does, notice that it says compressing objects. What Git does is it takes all of your files and compresses them into a format similar to zip or tar, and then it uploads them as a single file. What this means is that the process of syncing up, of pushing, of pulling, is much faster than with some other systems like Subversion. Also, if you are used to Subversion, then you might have noticed there's some nice tracking information as it uploads the data. So the important part here is that we've created a new branch, master to master, and this new branch is on the remote repository. And then it says branch master set up to track remote branch master from origin. So this says that our local branch master, called master, is tracking the remote branch that's called master from origin, which is our remote repository that we just created. So now, if we do git branch, and then we pass the a parameter, this will list all of our branches, even ones that are remote. We see that we have our master branch, and we have our remote's origin master branch. Now note that this remote branch is actually just a copy on our local repository. The real original version is on the remote side. So what we've done by creating the connection between our local and the remote branch is we have all of the revision information, all of the log messages, everything associated with that branch locally. So we can do things like compare revisions from our local branch to a remote branch without actually being online.